You're listening to the Actors Resource Podcast with Elaine, a podcast for actors and improvisers with interviews from entertainment industry experts.
Our guest today is Elaine Rivkin. Did I pronounce that right?
You did. Hello.
Yay. Okay, Elaine Rivkin, who is a recent transplant to LA from Chicago, where she spent decades acting, teaching, producing, and freelancing in casting. Her stage credits include Steppenwolf Theater, Victory Gardens, Writers, Northlight, Milwaukee Rep, Jiva, thank you, and many others. Since moving to LA, she has worked in new play development at Geffen, Center Theater Group, Boston Court, and New American Theater, where she became a company member doing Measure for Measure. Elaine's move to LA was prompted by a shift in focus to more on-camera work. Since she relocated, she has appeared on Chicago Fire, Shameless, The Dropout, American Crime Story, Impeachment, and American Horror Story. Elaine is a proud member of SAG AFTRA and AEA. She is repped by Sovereign Talent Group LA and managed by CSP Management. Elaine, thank you so much for being here.
Yay, it's nice to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so first, success stories. You recently, an achievement is that you recently booked a recurring role. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You know, it was kind of a fluke. I have a couple recurring on my IMDb, and in both cases, it was literally sort of a fluke. So for this one, it was a one-line co-star, and they decided to have another episode where another character has a phone call, and so I'm going to be a disembodied voice in a different episode. But it was just a teeny little co-star that turned into 2 episodes.
Oh, that's so cool. And so how did that happen? Like, you only expected the one co-star, you went home, you shot, you went home. And then, like, did your agent call you later and say, hey, we got you for another episode? Like, or did you have any idea?
I knew before I went to go shoot that it was going to end up being recurring. By the time I got the offer, they knew that there was going to be a phone call in another episode.
Okay.
So it was funny because my agent talked to me a little bit about it. She was like, oh, you're going to have a phone call with, a very famous historical figure. And I was like, really? I don't have any information about that. I didn't. And she was like, yeah. So that's kind of how it went. And so the whole thing, we shot it in one day. And then at the end, after they wrapped the cameras, they just kind of brought over the boom mics and we read the dialogue for the phone call. In fact, the woman playing the historical figure, who I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this or not because the NDAs are confusing, but it was her stand-in who read with me. And then I ended up going to ADR to nice. Re-record the voice because I guess the boom mic in the Oval Office just didn't tell the story clearly enough. So
right. So when you went to ADR, so this was like you got a notice a few days later and say, please come in and re-record. Is that how that worked?
Yeah. So they were like, hey, we want to bring you in for ADR and are you free? And how's, Friday, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, sure. Great. And it was kind of cool because by then it's already been edited, so I got to see what you guys will see on the TV show, this woman calling, the White House, and I'm play John F. Kennedy's secretary, which I can tell you that because the first episode already aired.
Oh, good.
So, so then I got to see her calling, and asking for Kennedy, and it was just kind of fun to see it when it was already done, and then you'd plop in your voice. I don't know if you've done ADR, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah,
I really like doing it.
I did it once for a short, but yeah, they had the video up and then we were to match it versus, so it was cool to be able to see what they were planning on, already edited, what they were planning on showing, right? So yeah, that was very cool.
It was kind of cool. I did that on Shameless too. It was fun because they decided to add a line. And I was in the first episode of the final season of Shameless, and we were all masked, right? Because they
Yes.
decided to set it during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so they decided to add a line, and they could totally do it because they didn't have to match anything. And just stand there with a mask on, you know?
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny. It worked out well.
That's cool. So we're gonna go back to your beginnings.
Mhm.
Like how did you first start to become a film and TV actor? Like
Well, I started out as a stage actor.
yes.
So that was what I trained for, and that was really where my focus was. And I, was part of a company, and we produced, and I was a literary manager too, and did all that kind of stuff. And we had a very, very successful run in Chicago. We were, kind of flavor of the week for a while, which was lovely. And that's how I ended up working at Steppenwolf and some of those other places. They hired me
Yeah.
without an audition, actually, after seeing, I know, which is very cool.
Wow.
After seeing me in another show that we had produced. So
That's really prestigious, like Steppenwolf, and to be able to.
I was floored. I have to be honest with you. I was pretty floored because it was an understudy gig, but with 4 guaranteed performances. And it was, the show had been running a little while. It was the world premiere of Steve Martin's play, Picasso at the Le Pen Agile. And so they decided to keep it running. And I had a friend who was understudying it, and she was going to drop out. And so to do a play with our theater company, actually, she was like, I've done this long enough. I'm going to take this role. And so the casting director, Phyllis Sheringa, called me up and said, hey, would you be willing to do this? We'll give you 4 guaranteed performances. And which never happens, at least not in Chicago. And I was like, yes, I will absolutely do that. And then I ended up finishing the run. So I did the 4 in between 2 actresses, and then I finished the run on the main stage.
Nice.
So that was kind of how that went down, which was kind of groovy. But Phyllis Sheringa is now the casting director at Geffen, which is how I was able to connect with Geffen when I got here, because she had put me in a few shows at Steppenwolf.
Oh, that is so cool.
Before she moved here years ago to work at Geffen.
Wow.
So that's how I started out. And I really had no aspirations for on-camera work. I didn't really think much about it. And I started doing a lot of commercials in Chicago. And, and I was like, well, this is pretty groovy. And there wasn't a ton of TV in Chicago at the time. We had a few shows, Prison Break and Early Edition, I think it was called, but just not a lot. And it's changed quite a bit. But I was doing a lot of commercial work and that kind of thing. So that was sort of how I, sort of started thinking about being an on-camera actor. And then did one of those fluke, I got a recurring on Chicago PD because they decided to have a cliffhanger for the episode before. So they showed the back of our heads at a conference table, and that counted for being in another episode.
Wait, okay. So you were doing commercials. Now, how did you transition from commercials onto Chicago PD?
In Chicago, there's only like 4 casting directors. And I think at that point in time, there were only 3, what I mean, who cast all the film, TV, commercial, industrials, So they knew everybody knew everybody kind of thing. Yeah. And so I had an agent, and I was going in pretty regularly for commercials, and Claire Simon was casting PD at the time. She might still be now, I'm not sure, but it seems they move around a lot. It seems like those shows. But so I'd gotten to know Claire, and I had booked a lot of work through her. And so that was sort of how that happened. They were like, hey, can we bring you in? And with the Dick Wolf shows, at least in Chicago, if you've been on the show, then they can't see you again, at least for a few years, even if it's a small role. So, they were seeing everybody for everything,
Yeah.
So that was kind of how that came down. And so I was, a brass, a top brass. It's called a white shirt. And that was the
Uh-huh.
role, female white shirt. I had no idea what that was. It turns out I was like Sophia Bush's, superior, and I'd ball her out,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, who knew? Okay. So, it was a little bit of a fluke, but I was so immersed in the theater world that I wasn't really pursuing television. You know what I mean? And then I became, it just feels like all of a sudden everything just boomed with the streaming Netflix and HBO and all that stuff. And all of a sudden there's so much amazing television being produced.
Yeah.
And so, and some in Chicago, the Chicago universe is there, and there's a few more shows now. But that if that's what you wanted to do for a living, that's really not the place to make a living, I think. Personally, I know a couple of friends who live in Chicago and make a living as an actor, but for the most part, you either needed a day job or you needed to be married to somebody with money, or you know what I mean, if you were just going to be a full-time actor.
Yeah.
And so so that was part of it. There was some other life changes that I was going through at the time, and all of a sudden my child was grown and I wasn't married anymore, and I was like, I can do whatever I want, so
Yeah.
I guess maybe I'll move to California. So
Like,
it was a little bit of a, it was kind of in a way. I mean, I miss my friends and I miss the community there.
Yeah.
I was there for 30 some years,
Wow.
working in Chicago. So I've got a lot of very, very close, dear friends there. And, but it was, time to do something new. And so I decided, I was actually doing a play in San Diego, and it was the day after Christmas. And I was walking on the beach with, in a t-shirt and rolled up jeans and bare feet.
Yeah.
Down in Carlsbad. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden I was looking around at these homes on the beach, and I was like, it's December, I'm like, I'm in a t-shirt. And I don't know if you've ever been to Chicago in the winter, but with the polar vortex in recent years, it gets down sometimes to 40 degrees below zero.
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
kidding, with the wind chill factor. And
Ooh.
they'll have to cancel schools because they can't have kids waiting on bus stops because they'll get frostbite if they have exposed skin for more than 5 minutes or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
So, and I'm walking on a beach the day after Christmas going, this is a choice. People choose this for themselves. I'm like, hey, I could choose this for me. So that's kind of how it began. And I was originally going to move to San Diego because I really loved it down there. But there just isn't enough work, to really be sustaining. There are some theaters, not a ton of on-camera work. So I thought, well, if I'm going to move across the country, I need to go where the major market is. So that's kind of how I wound up here doing this kind of work. And I was very fortunate. I did a showcase and got a great agent right away when I got here. And
the one you're with right now?
Yeah, Nancy at Sovereign Talent Group.
Nice.
And so then it was like, well, off we go. And I just, I think a lot of people come with a plan. I wasn't one of those people. I really was just flying by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
Because of the years that I had worked in casting, I was freelancing for one of those, one of the 4 casting directors in Chicago, Pascal Rudnicki, and they're a absolutely fabulous group of ladies. I love them very, very dearly. But, it's what sort of occurred to me was, people can't buy your product if they don't know it exists. So I'm like, well, then what I'm going to do is go meet as many potential buyers as I can meet.
Right.
So, that's when I started doing classes and stuff like that. And I know that, they say this isn't a casting opportunity, blah, 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 but it is an opportunity to meet people, right?
When you
and
say
work
classes,
with them and learn from them.
Yeah. When you say classes, you mean casting director classes that you're taking.
Exactly.
Not different acting training classes, the casting director.
Right. And I started doing other classes as well. In fact, that's where we met, right? At Actors Comedy Studio, doing the multi-cam class, which was a blast.
That was so much fun.
It was so much fun. I think Gunnar is a very, very, very smart and talented man. And I learned a lot in that class. And
Yes.
honestly, I would love to do multicam. Like right now,
Me
that would
too.
be my dream scenario, is like, I want to be on one of those hit multicams for 10 years, because it's the perfect
Yes.
hybrid between theater and on camera. And the schedule
Yeah.
is sane.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You learn a
You
new
get
script and you go and you perform it, and you take your bow, and then next week you got a new script, and it
Yes.
just looks like a total blast to me.
Yes. Yes.
And we went and watched. Did we go see Mom together?
We saw Mom
We saw
back
Mom.
back before COVID, right? Just shortly before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And we were in the live studio audience, and that was just so
Mhm.
much fun,
It's
you
a
know?
total blast. I'd seen the Connors live, and I was like, this is great. This is great,
Yes.
So I'd love to do everything, but
Yeah.
right now I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be great, to be
Yeah.
one of those series regulars on a multicam. So
Yes.
I still have my sights set on
Definitely. Yes. You and me both.
that. Yeah, it's like it just seems like the perfect world.
Right, because you actually, well, before COVID, you actually also got an audience, right? So like you said, it's a perfect mix of TV and theater, right? And
Yeah.
it's like in the moment and it's live, and yeah, it's great.
It's just so much fun. And I still kind of geek out every time I'm on a studio lot. You know what I mean? To me, that's still very thrilling. Both American Crime Story and American Horror Story, I got to shoot down on the Fox lot.
Yes.
And it's just so cool to be there. They're like, you're driving down New York Street, like, this is great. I
Yeah.
just get a massive kick out of it. And we have CineSpace now in Chicago, but it ain't the Fox lot. It's not Warner Brothers. So it's lovely though. Don't get me wrong, I would work there in a second.
Yes.
But, happily. But it's, there's just so much history on these other lots, like, oh, this is where they shot, From Here to Eternity, or whatever it is, So
Yeah.
I get a huge kick out of it.
I think it's just amazing to be on any lot, right? Like you said. And then especially if it's one with history, like you said, or a really large lot, or a lot that shoots one of your favorite shows, and you're like, oh, that's where they shoot my favorite,
Exactly.
It's like,
Exactly.
ooh. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. At this point though, you're doing great. I mean, you've only moved to LA not that long ago, right? From
Yeah,
Chicago to LA.
about 3 years ago.
3 years, and you kind of had to start all over because you did not know anyone. You did not have a plan, like you said.
Yeah. I
That
was
sounds like a big
absolutely
challenge.
going from scratch. And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, and it's been a lot of hard work. I mean, I think one of the biggest eye openers for me was the level of hustle you have to have here. You know what I mean? In Chicago, as I said, everybody knew everybody. The
Right.
4 casting directors went out and saw a lot of plays, and so here, I've got a list, it's in my file drawer, but of the, I don't know, 80 people that I've taken classes with so far, or whatever it is,
Woo. Yeah.
that means that there's still 100 that I haven't even met yet,
Wow. Yeah.
and they say to target, certain people and certain shows. Like here's my other dream thing. I want to be Henry Winkler's next girlfriend on Barry.
That would be amazing. I just had the switch in emotion, because it's like, I could totally see you being his girlfriend. That would be amazing. And then at the same time, I just thought, without it doing any spoilers, I just thinking about his ex-girlfriend.
Yes.
What happened, without spoilers, in case nobody's watched. And in case somebody's who's listening who hasn't seen Barry,
why he doesn't have that girlfriend anymore. We don't want to say why. But but that's like one office, Bialy Thomas, that I would love to meet them, but I haven't gotten a foot in that door yet. So the work continues. We continue to hustle, and I did recently get a new manager. So that's not a thing in Chicago. I shouldn't say that. There are maybe but almost no one I knew had one. You know what I mean? Like maybe if you were one of the couple of famous people in Chicago, you had one. But so that was a real foreign concept to me when I first got here. I was like, well, why would you need an agent and a manager? You know?
Yeah.
And I got very conflicting reports about it. Some people were like, you know, if you're really famous and you have to be here for this shoot and there for that talk show, and then you got this project and you have to read these scripts, and you need somebody to literally help manage your schedule, help manage your time. But in my experience, it's led to just more auditions. And so, you know, at first I'm like, well, you know, okay, so you're gonna pay out 20% of your earnings instead of 10, but you know, I'd gladly spend 20% to earn more, because you know, 10% of nothing isn't getting me any further ahead. So so far that's been a very, very happy a happy marriage.
Great, great. So the manager you did get, so now that you're in LA and you're like, okay, I will get this manager, and you do. Your manager at this time are they acting, because there's different kinds of managers right out there. How is your manager, if you want to share? And so they're just helping you get more auditions, for sure, you said.
Yeah, I think she's fabulous. I love my agent and my manager. So her name is Maritza at CSP Management. And she, you know, it feels like she maybe has I don't know if it's because she has a smaller roster or just how she allocates her time, but she does seem to have a little bit more time to hard pitch. So she's hard pitched me for more auditions. And so if you have listeners who are outside of LA, you know, the ratio of like how many people are submitted for a co-star versus how many people actually get to audition, you know, it's in the thousands, right? They might get 2,000-3,000 submissions for a one-line co-star. And then, you know, before COVID, they would see, I don't know, 10 or 12 or something like that. Now with Zoom, I think they're seeing more. You know, they might request 25 tapes, you know, or something like that, because it's easier for them to watch them all. But I lost my train of thought. Wait, where was I going with this? So
your manager pitches you.
The manager. So yeah, so she'll get on the phone with a casting director and be like, "You really got to see this woman. You know, she'd be hilarious. She'd be great." And that has led to more auditions.
More auditions. That is great. That's wonderful. How long have you been with them now?
I want to say maybe it was June.
Oh, yes, really very new.
June, yeah. And then I've had three co-stars since then.
Woo!
There, I feel very, very, very thankful and appreciative. So
yes. So since you got your new manager, not only does she pitch you, but you've gotten more auditions and you've booked more recently.
I think part of it's a numbers game. I should give a shout out to my agent too, who also hard pitches me. She did. That's how I got on Shameless. You know what I mean? She hard pitched me for John Frank Levy a couple of times.
Nice. So, that is so cool. So,
thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Maritza. Thank you, Universe, you know, for helping me.
And yourself too.
There. You know, right? I'm down for hard work. I do not shy away from working hard at stuff. So
no. At this point, right? So those were some of your challenges when you first came over, and you started taking action. Like you adjusted your actions to the new market with more, you know, marketing and going to the casting director classes so you can meet the buyers of your product, of your acting.
Right. And one of the things that I stumbled upon that was extremely helpful is, have you heard of Asia Ray Coleman? She's got this acting resource guru.
Yes.
She's got all these amazing free videos on YouTube. And so I sort of stumbled across like, how do you do this? You know, and all of a sudden there's this wealth of information.
Yes.
You know, she's brilliant. And so that led me into like, oh, I should do this, I should try that. And Bonnie Gillespie too has her whole thing about branding and all that. So I did her 11 steps, so I just learned a ton through those kinds of resources. And I always like to give them a plug because it was such valuable information. Like even the way you structure an acting resume is different in LA than in Chicago. There you would say, oh, I played female white shirt. And here you say recurring, or co-star or guest star or series regular, just the way you format it. I remember one of my early casting director workshops, they look at your headshot and resume and they're like, oh, this picture works, this picture doesn't, they look at your resume. And I had a bunch of them say, like, you got to get rid of a whole bunch of your theater credits. It's too much. And I was like, what?
You're like, my babies?
Killing my babies. I'm like, I can't do that, But they were like, yeah, no, it's over. They're like, we get the idea. You've been in a lot of plays. Yeah. We don't know who these people are. We don't know what these plays are. Just,
wow.
Keep the kind of important ones and move on,
Whoa.
So I know, interesting, but it was really fortunate to be here at a time where there is just a ton of information available like that that anybody can find. So I highly recommend.
Right. And this is part of your business, is that what you're recommending, they're marketing, right? They're marketing business classes for your acting, right?
That's true. I mean, that's it. The hustle is real. And you have to nurture your artistic side too, right?
Oh, yes.
And so that is taking, I'm always in class, and I honestly have been basically since I got my undergraduate degree, very long time ago, but I always wanted to be in class. So when I wasn't in a play, I just like to always be in scene study. I did a lot of Meisner and Shakespeare and, those kinds of things, just to sort of keep myself, my head in that sort of artistic frame of mind where I feel comfortable, confident, and creative,
right?
So that at a moment's notice. So I've got a Wednesday night group that I'm a part of, and that's mostly a lot of people from Chicago, but we just rent a theater space and we meet on Wednesday nights, and we bring scenes and we critique each other and we do the scenes and we work on stuff. And some of the guys play guitar and, they'll bring a song or, so we were on Zoom for most of COVID, but now we're back and we rent the Zephyr Theater down on Melrose on Wednesdays. And so that's been really good. Actors Comedy Studio I really liked, and I do ongoing classes at BGB Studio.
Yeah.
And they're fabulous. So it is an investment. That's the other thing about LA is that I would imagine it would be very, very hard to figure out how to get a foothold if you don't have two nickels to rub together. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I was fortunate to have a little bit of money so that I could get new headshots and take classes and that kind of thing. Because it's like any business, you do need some startup costs.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's much, much harder if you don't have that anything, to kind of help you launch.
Right.
Unless you're well connected. I don't. I can't speak to that.
Me either. But what is cool about today's day and age, especially one of the, if I can say this, the good things out of COVID is like you said, there's the free resources on YouTube. If you're in a position where you are in the moment not able to invest financially yet as much as you want, there are those free resources on YouTube. You can get your Wednesday group doesn't, you contribute to renting the theater, right, but that's not a class, right? Mm-hmm. So you can get together with a group of other people and actors where you can practice your craft, yes, ideally, if you have some kind of financial support in some way, whether it's a support job or person or, whatever, then that's even better, because then you can, pay for some of these other classes. But in the meantime, thank goodness for the internet now, and COVID now. So you can do self tapes from, your home. And
It's true. I kind of like doing the self tapes.
Yeah.
Personally, because I don't have to get on the 405, I'm like, this is great, but you do it in your own time when you're ready, when you've got the time. And so, I bought a backdrop and a ring light and a tripod, and I used my phone, and, I like it because you can do a zillion of them and never have to worry about scheduling or commuting back and forth. So, and it does seem that they're seeing more actors,
right.
for each
Yeah.
role. So that kind of gives us all a little bit of a more opportunity, which I think is good.
Yes. We're getting close to our time. I appreciate you being here so much. Where are you now? Like, last couple of questions. Where are you now? Where are you headed? Anything you want to share about, how we can follow you and stuff like that?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm still kind of plugging along. I mean, my goals are, as I said before, I'm like a little more than just doing co-stars. So I'm still in the trenches, kind of punching up, like most of us.
Yeah.
So I am talking to a friend about doing a little film coming up, and I've got some,
Ooh.
I know I've got some auditions that are out there in the ether trying to collect some stardust, but so nothing, no immediate plans for plays or anything like that. In fact, I haven't even been out seeing theater since COVID, and I know some theaters are starting to reopen. So I kind of feel like maybe once I get a booster shot, I'll feel a bit happier about that idea. But so that's kind of just where I'm still in the trenches. I'm still, trudging along, but feeling hopeful. And
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not a big social media person. I don't, do big splashy stuff. So, but my Instagram is my name, Elaine Rivkin, and I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on Twitter. So I'm old. I don't know. I'm old and reluctant, occasionally I'll post something funny, but yeah. So I'm not a big social media lady.
Yeah. But you look fabulous, just so you know.
Well, thank you. It's nice, like I said, to be not freezing at the end of October. I remember many Halloweens, taking my kid trick-or-treating in the snow. So this warmer weather suits me. I like it a lot. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I appreciate you being here and sharing your story. It's wonderful. So take you so much.
And thank you for listening to the Actors Resource Podcast with me, Aaliyah Lay. I would love to hear from you, so email me, AliyahKLay@gmail.com. ALYAKLEI@gmail.com.